Architecture as a profession has not changed in maybe 1,000 years. The metaverse provides an incredible opportunity for a lot of architectural practices to disrupt themselves and think differently about the worlds and experiences that they're creating. My name is Kirk Finkel, or Untitled XYZ. I'm an artist and metaverse architect. My work over the last few years has focused on metaverse and designing different virtual experiences for architecture. I work with museums, institutions, galleries, and private collectors to build experiences in the metaverse for their art collection and for their NFTs. So what excites me a lot about building in the metaverse is it is a new type of public space. It's a new type of environment that is incredibly social and connective with people all over the world who could never have otherwise had the opportunity to meet. And from my background as an urban designer, that was very exciting to me because you could create a place, an environment that could host people, host discussions, provide meeting points. But one of the many benefits of the metaverse is you can get a meeting of minds from people all over the world so quickly, simultaneously, all together in a way that's so much more dynamic than a website. In the traditional architecture world, when you create a building, you're looking at how that building can survive for 100 years. In the metaverse world, so you're not designing for 100 years, you might be designing for a week. And so that makes what you build virtually extremely iterative. You can cycle through design choices, you can reflect the moment of what's happening in the virtual space more reactively. And that's not something a physical building can do. It reacts to maybe the tastes and the times of a particular moment and then hopes that it can kind of sustain and last through the tests of time. When you're designing in the metaverse, you're not dealing with the typical constraints of something physical. You have the ability to quickly change out lighting, different geometries, different shapes, how complex those shapes can be, the color of those shapes, the material or texture you put on top of it. That really changes the process of how an architect looks at what a building can be and what it can do. Coming from the traditional architecture world, it's a really exciting dynamic that I hope real architects take seriously as a new medium. So some of the bigger constraints of when a designer or an architect looks at creating a building, they're looking at polygon count, how many faces are in a particular geometry. They're looking at colliders and basically what an avatar will bump into or navigate through. It basically provides physics for a build. So those parameters are changing all the time as the metaverse evolves. And it's a really interesting kind of moving target for a designer to keep track of and really understand the technical parameters and the backbone of what makes up their building. I know from my own experience, it's been very, very hard to break into architectural practices and say, here's a new discipline that you really need to pay attention to seriously. And I think a lot of people think it's bogus and that it's a fad. And for architects, they want people to experience their buildings. But physical buildings are limited by geography, they're limited by social status in some cases, or a ticket to a museum might be too costly for some people. But if you have a virtual museum that anyone can access at the click of a button for free, I think that's a dynamic that's worth exploring and worth paying serious attention to because it can change the way that we connect with one another. I do think that the metaverse will be as commonplace as websites are today. They're just ways to share and to communicate information with the public. We should not repeat the same mistakes that we make physically in real-world architecture in neighborhoods and cities. Issues of equality and issues of access should not be repeated in the metaverse, and I think over the next 5 to 10 years, if we can make a more open and accessible world, it will be a success. So in the same way that virtual real estate offers opportunity for people to participate at different levels, the same applies for the architecture industry and how young architects can have creative freedom and the opportunity to create and build their own practice.